Hello and welcome to the next episode of the EV Bids podcast. My name is Tori Hornsby. I'm your host today. I have alongside me Rod Stuckey. How you doing, Rod?
I'm doing great, Tori. It's good to be here.
Good to have you. So today we're going to be talking about buying an EV from a seller that is out of state or that lives a long distance from you, and how to avoid some of the pitfalls of buying a vehicle that's sight unseen, that maybe you've only seen photos of. I do feel this is a very timely subject because the used EV tax credit of up to $4,000 has created a recent surge in the pre-owned EV market. Now, one of the first challenges that we can discuss here is that the tax credit requires that you buy the EV from a dealership. And that is one service that EV Bids offers to our customers, is that we'll act as broker, and you can purchase a vehicle from a private party. We'll process the paperwork so that you can apply the used tax credit. But our subject today of avoiding the pitfalls when you're buying a car sight unseen or shipping it across the country, really, I think that's kind of the first challenge here. Rod, what are some pitfalls or some things that we can do to, as a consumer, to buy a car sight unseen? What questions should we ask the seller?
Yeah, I think that's always a great place to start is to get in contact with the seller, and every EV out there has a story, and it's good to learn about the vehicle by just, as you mentioned, asking questions to the seller. Why are you selling this car? How long have you owned it? All the basic questions that kind of seem commonsensical, but sometimes, we just forget to ask, what sorts of driving conditions was the car mostly, driven in. Obviously, if you're, up north, that may be different than being, maybe you're in the Sun Belt. Was it garage kept? Mm-hmm. Were you driving it? Was your wife driving it? Were your kids driving it? What's the status of the warranty on the vehicle? Where did you have your service work done? Do you have the copies of your service records? And then, moving on, does the car have a clean title? Does the car have a free and clear title, which are two very different things? So, I think that's always a great starting point. I recommend is to kind of try to develop a rapport with the seller, because, people, EV owners in particular, tend to be, they tend to all have something in common, some sort of enthusiasm about electric vehicles. And so by just getting to know the seller, that also is just kind of a good way. You can kind of get a vibe about someone when you talk to them. And that's why I recommend getting their phone number and having a conversation, and not just doing it all electronically. You can really learn a lot more when you have a conversation with someone, from, their voice tone and inflection and the words that they're using and their lifestyle, that can give you a lot more of an indication of what is the story of that car than you'll get just by looking at pictures online.
You've brought up a lot of good subjects that I think we should delve into. But before we go any further, and you mentioned like the difference on a clean title versus a free and clear title. Before we go there, just on the condition of the vehicle, what are some ways that a buyer can verify the condition? Obviously, there's the pictures. That's a big way, is asking for additional pictures. But what are some other ways that you can verify the condition?
Well, you always start with you in this day and age, you really need to get a vehicle history report, often known as a Carfax report. I think we actually did a podcast on vehicle history reports and kind of how they work and how they affect values of vehicles. But a vehicle history report, a Carfax, there's a lot of different companies out there that provide vehicle history reports, but that's going to let you know, is the title free and clear, and is it clean? And so an example of a clean title means that it's not a branded title, such as a salvage or rebuilt title. meaning that it's been, totaled, sold to a junkyard, and then repaired and put back into the market. There's a lemon branded title that says this vehicle basically was sold back to the manufacturer because it had repairs that couldn't be fixed at one time, hail damage, odometer discrepancy, flood water. So there's a lot of different branded titles out there. So, and I'm not saying that they're all bad. There can be some good deals from some of these, but you just want to know what you're getting. And then there is, having a free and clear title, meaning is it free of liens, meaning that it's, the vehicle isn't encumbered and money owed to a bank. And if there is, it doesn't mean that the deal is dead. It just means that the deal has to be structured completely differently than if it's an all cash deal with a free and clear title.
Yeah. And going back to like external, condition, you actually have mentioned something to me. You found a company that I find absolutely fascinating that will actually come out to the seller's house or meet them at their place of business. And it's a paid for service that the buyer would have to pay for, but they will take pictures and send you a full report. What was the name of that company?
It's called the Lemon Squad, and they're an independent automotive inspection company. And it varies a couple $100, give or take, depending on where you live. But they'll have an inspector come out and inspect the car and write a full report on it to provide it to you. And it's just if you're really serious about buying a vehicle and it's out of state, long ways away, and maybe for some reason after talking to the seller, you're thinking, man, I just something I just want to be, completely at ease with this. I want to be sure that I've done my due diligence. It's a great option to have that extra little comfort of an independent inspector coming out and really looking over the condition of the vehicle and verifying that it is what you, what you're understanding it to be.
Most cars are going to have some rock chips or a little ding there, here and there, minor stuff, but it still is nice to have those things notated so that before you purchase it that it doesn't have anything more than what you're expecting. They also will give you how much wear or how much life and tread is left on the tires. But if you're not going to do the Lemon Squad report, one of the things that you can do is have the seller take a picture of the tread, the side view of the tire with the penny. And this is something I learned back in my dealership days, early on, before all these tools existed now. But if you put a penny down in the tire and you see old Abe's head, then the tires are at the end of life and need to be replaced. So there's the penny trick for tires. I'm sure you remember that, don't you, Rod?
I do, but I mean, where do you get a penny in this day and age, Tori? I don't know if these young whippersnappers could round one up or not.
That is true. We're in almost a cashless society these days. But another thing on EVs, we have a couple of things going for us in terms of condition. One is the software. If the batteries have an issue, the screen alerts you and the car will essentially shut down or limit the driving. So that's one good thing. And in selling a lot of Teslas, we've had a lot of questions on batteries and people asking, well, hey, how do we know the battery is good? Well, it's good because there's no alerts telling you that it's bad. And then if the drive unit's messed up, same thing, a lot additional sensors and software that's running and will alert if there's something wrong. And lastly here, just one more note on the brakes on an EV. Because of the regenerative braking, when you let off the gas pedal, the car is braking itself using the motor for regenerative charging the battery. And so brakes tend to last so long on EVs. Just a couple of little notes there. So you mentioned about the clean title, which is the brand, and you talked about the brands. And then you talked about a free and clear title. And then you said it doesn't mean that the deal is dead if there is a lien. So let's talk about that for a second. If a buyer wants to buy a vehicle from a seller, obviously it's uncomfortable if a guy's selling a car for $35,000 and still owes 20 grand on it and is saying, hey, just give me the 35 grand and trust me, I'll send you the title. Obviously, That's worrisome. What are some tips there for if there is a lien?
Yeah. So, doing the paperwork in a private sale transaction is always a bit clumsy, and in particular, doing one out of state or long distance, you need to have a bill of sale, of course. And there are certain things that are on the bill of sale. I would always Google your particular state, what needs to be on the bill of sale, obviously VIN number, odometer, things like that, but some other things, copy of the seller's driver's license, the title, but to get a long way to answer your question, Tori, a cash deal would be considered that the deal, that the title is free and clear. It's not encumbered by a lien. If in fact there is a lien, then things get a little bit stickier, and that's where the buyer really needs to reach out to the bank of the seller and verify the payoff amount, and work with the seller to ensure that the buyer is only going to be paying the seller the difference in the payoff amount and the equity. And so it can get a little bit, I don't want to say complicated. It's not as complicated as it is. You really have to have trust in between the relationship, and that's where a service like EV Bids, we do offer a brokerage service where we handle the paperwork between buyer and seller, and we do things like identification, ID verification of buyers and sellers, through email, through text, through basically they call it name, address, phone number verification, and some other ways that using a broker can be a good way to kind of have that middleman to ensure a safe and secure transaction. But there is a different level of complexity when doing a finance deal.
Right, because if it's long distance, you can't just meet at the bank. So if it's closer, you could just go and meet at U.S. Bank if there's a branch near you, and then do the paperwork there. But you want to be sure that you have the bill of sale signed and verify the payoff amount, because some people sell in a vehicle. We've discovered this often is some people sell in a vehicle. They're like, hey, I don't want this payment anymore. I don't want this $600 payment anymore. So I want to sell my EV, and market value on it's 35. I owe 45. And so I just want somebody to just take over the payments. It's like, hold on, you're missing something here. You're $10,000 upside down. You have $10,000 in negative equity. And so making sure the seller understands that if they owe more than you're buying the car for, or the value of the car, they have to come up with that extra cash. And sellers oftentimes inherently don't understand that. What about?
And as silly as that sounds, Tori, it's quite common that, I mean, in defense of these people, like, this isn't really stuff we're taught in school.
No.
Like, these are things you learn as you become an adult. But there are sellers that think, so wait a minute, I could, my EV's worth, $25,000 or and I owe, $30,000 on it. I could sell it for the $25,000, get $25,000 cash, put it in the bank, and just keep making the payments on it, and no one will ever know the difference. Plus, I have $25,000 in the bank, and I just keep making the payments. And they think that that's completely legal, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it sounds silly, but that is the kind of thing that going back to the first thing we talked about having a conversation with the seller and just kind of developing a rapport with them and getting to know them. And you can kind of pick up pretty quickly the level of sophistication. We deal here at EV Bids, we deal with all types, and we get people that are so well-versed and knowledgeable that they teach us things every single day. And then we deal with people that are just, daddy's always done it. And now daughter's out of college and she's living on her own, and she just doesn't even have a clue. And it's no, slight on her. She just doesn't simply have the experience to know how this stuff is done, and can be very, naive about the whole thing. So it's
and that's
real,
not a
very
dig
real.
on, on females.
No.
That's just an example.
I say that because I have two
Yeah.
daughters that age, so I'm trying to teach them about tags and
Right.
titles and taxes and all these fun things that we don't really
There's
ever get taught about. So it's just
plenty
a learning
of
curve.
guys out there that are in the same situation, but the deal
Yep.
isn't dead. But there are escrow services out there. They cost money, but a lot of times buyers won't agree to an escrow service because they hold your money, and you could ship the car, and now the car is across the country, and the buyer says, you know what, I changed my mind, and now the car is across the country. The seller doesn't get their money, and now they have to figure out a way to get it back. So that's kind of out of the question. I would just emphasize what you said, Rod, in terms of EV Bids handling this. We can handle that. We verify the payoff. We get the title released to us, and then we reassign it to the buyer, and we'll handle all of that as a part of, and really kind of acting as that escrow. But the benefit is that the buyer will get money immediately. We take the money and give it to the buyer immediately, and verify all those details for that safe and secure transaction. But speaking of that, what about the money? That, I guess maybe I just answered that question. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on it, but one of the common questions we get is, how do you handle payment on a long distance transaction?
Yeah, so we really recommend, for the most part, wire transfers. We've done some certified check deals and things like that. Cash amounts are getting, everybody says cash money, but really, the dollar amounts on EVs are so high. It's, you're going to meet in a parking lot with a briefcase full of cash is going to be kind of awkward. So wire transfers, some folks, you can do ACH, but by all accounts, we find wire transfers to be the most safe and secure way for both parties to transfer.
Wire transfers are also really fast, to where an ACH can take days before it actually deposits. Wire transfers, as long as you use the same day, they take 15 to 30 minutes and it's done. So big benefit there. So moving on, what about somebody buys a car across the country and the EV gets delivered? How do they get a tag?
Yeah. So when you buy that EV from across the country and you have your bill of sale and your title in hand, you can then drive without a temporary operating permit. So there's no tag on the vehicle. We call them TOPS, temporary operating permits. It varies by state, but it's not 30 days like a lot of people think. Most states, it's like, I know in Georgia, where we're based out of, it's 7 days. You can go to your county tag office with a copy of the bill of sale and a copy of the title, and they will provide you with a tag right there on the spot. You'll have to pay your taxes, depending on, again, in Georgia, they're called ad valorem taxes. Some states it's, sales tax. But yeah, you just take your bill of sale and your title to your local tag office, and within 7 days, depending on your state, and you can get a tag right there. Now, if you use a brokerage company like EV Bids, you'll be provided with a temporary operating permit. So you'll actually have a paper tag like you bought it from a dealership that will give you 30 days to go to your local tag office and handle the registration.
And if there is a lien, it can take some time before the title's released. And so those 7 days of being able to drive with the bill of sale, you can go to the DMV with your bill of sale and say, hey, I'm waiting on the title. Can I get a temporary permit? And you can pay them for one. But who wants to do that? One more advantage of doing business with us, we'll ship you a paper tag. And then the last question here, I'll just answer this one because I've typically provided our shipping quotes, but that is the question is, well, how do I handle shipping and how much is it? And so I'll do a quick screen share. For those who are listening on audio, I'll explain what we're looking at here. I pulled up just, rides in Florida. I'm in Georgia right now. And but how much does it cost to ship a car to Florida? What I found in this guide is actually really good estimates on shipping from pretty much anywhere to anywhere. If you're going north to south or south to north, it tends to be a little bit more expensive. And so if you're going longer distance, you can see anywhere from 40 cents up to 95 cents. And a lot of that depends on, like, if you're shipping into Boston or Baltimore, the price will go up because there's a lot more toll roads, that there's a lot more fees, and the city is congested and it takes a lot longer and it's stressful. So it costs more. To where if you're shipping from Atlanta to Oklahoma, it's pretty straightforward. Interstate all the way over to their wide open spaces, it'll be a little less expensive. But what I recommend is that you get a quote from a few places. Montway's a good one. Roadrunner Transport's another one. UShip. What I like about UShip is that you can get a quote right on the spot from a more commercial standpoint, or they have a marketplace from people who are car haulers who are going to be driving through Peachtree City or near it, and they're going to be going through Dallas Fort Worth later on a trip, and they'll pick up and give you a really low price quote. It's not 100% of the time, because it's people who are looking and paying attention to their load and what they have open. So you don't always get this great deal. But UShip, you can get either the commercial version or you can get the marketplace version, create an account there. But shipping a car, 40 cents to up to 95 cents a mile is a really good range there. Anything to add to that, Rod?
Yeah, I just want to add that, when we first got into this business, and when I moved down to Florida, I thought, shipping a car was so foreign to me. I just kind of thought it was a hassle and a complex thing. And, now having done it a lot of times, it's simple. It's easy. It's no big deal. Like, it's just shipping a car is no big deal. I mean, in some ways, Tori and I, we have a background in the motorcycle business for many years as well. In some days, shipping a motorcycle is more complicated than a car, because, loading a motorcycle and tying it down takes a little bit of a specialized expertise that not a lot of people have. And it's just, I wouldn't over stress or overthink having a car shipped. It's just not that big a deal. And it's a lot of experts out there that know what they're doing, that do an excellent job with it. And it's insured, it's licensed, and it's pretty easy to do and very reasonably priced.
A lot less expensive than most people think. So, but that's it. Yeah. That concludes our time today on the subject of buying an EV from a seller that lives across the country or out of state, long distance from you. Hope this was valuable content for you guys. Again, just a shameless plug, EV Bids would love to handle this for you. We have a very reasonable fee for closing private party sales. We'll even process the tax credit if the vehicle and the buyer are eligible. We'll process the tax credit as a part of that fee. So give us a call or shoot us an email, and we'd love to tell you all the details or give you a quote on helping you out there. For Tori Hornsby, or excuse me, for Rod Stuckey, I'm Tori Hornsby. Let me get those names right. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Tori.